Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants. Welcome back to the podcast, brothers. This is Rick Moore, past master of Fort Worth 148.
This is Billy Hamilton, senior warden for Fort Worth 148.
This is Gabe Yagish, junior warden of Fort Worth 148.
This is Evie Kirkendall, master of ceremonies, Fort Worth 148.
And we have a special guest.
This is Jim Rumsey, past master of Pine Tree Lodge in Longview, Texas, past master of Texas Lodge of Research, elected member of the Committee on Work, and your grand junior deacon of the Grand Lodge of Texas.
Well, it's good to have you right where for work, sir.
Thank you, Rip.
Excellent. Well, I know really the reason we wanted to have you on is because the main reason is to go over the revised temporary process for receiving DDGMs when we get back to action. Isn't that May 25th when we're allowed to go back to?
That's Monday
again?
Week.
Okay.
Next Monday.
Yeah, so this will already be out by then. So we're getting close. May 25th, just in time. So we're going to go over with you the process for receiving the DDGMs because those are supposed to resume if that hasn't happened. And of course, that process has got to change since we're 6 feet distance. But we'll talk about some other stuff as well. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure to be here, as always. Been a couple of years since I was on here with you guys. Feels like it was yesterday.
Really? Has it been that long?
A couple of years, yeah. A couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was spring of 2018. Whenever you guys were having me on last.
Oh man, how time flies.
Yeah, why would we have you on? You were nobody then. Now you got a title.
Well, I had just gotten elected whenever you had me on the first time.
Rick,
now
there you go, insulting somebody's.
Now, keep in mind that there's only one error on that video showing the revised reception of the deputy, Rick.
And I'm glad you bring that up. What did I say when we realized we made a mistake the first time? I said, if we re-record it now, we're going to get me making a mistake. And what happened?
And we did.
And we did.
No, not only did we get it, we didn't catch it until 3 days later.
Oh, and I felt like I made a mistake at that point, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't know what it was. I just felt like I did. And we just kept rolling through, like, oh my goodness. It's good times.
It's all good.
Yeah. Well, I'll learn that at some point or another.
Was that one of those things where it feels too good to be wrong?
So the discussion question I put together, we may have talked about this before, but I figured since I've got somebody that obviously takes the ritual pretty seriously, I have the discussion question. Why do you feel it's important to have and learn a unified ritual?
Why do you feel like I feel it's important?
I was going to say there's an assumption baked into that, Rick.
Yeah, there is.
So let's pedal back there for a second. Mm-hmm. Is it important to have a unified ritual, and if so, why? If not, why?
I do believe that it is, and I do believe that it is important to have and learn a unified ritual. So what is ritual if it's not unified? So think about that. When you get up in the morning, most of us have a ritual that we deal with as far as, do we brush our teeth first? Do we get a cup of coffee first? Do we take a shower first? Do we shave first? Most of us follow that same ritual or pretty close every morning. And if it's off, it can throw other things off. So I think just at the core of us being men and humans, ritual is important to how we, as humans, navigate our daily lives. Therefore, on the fraternal side, that I think it is important to have a unified ritual because we all understand what Gabe went through, what Billy went through, what Jim went through, what Paul Underwood went through, what Donnie Broughton went through. Even though the setting may have been different, we all know what everybody went through, and we can relate to that. And when you can relate to that, you can talk about that. When you can talk about that, it opens up the fraternity to a true brotherhood where you have that connection and can talk about almost anything and feel comfortable just because of that little small aspect of a unified ritual.
How do you feel about the level of unification at a 10,000-foot level versus a 1-foot level? Example being,
I believe the theme should be unified. If you look at different grand jurisdictions, that's what we have. So the theme of an entered apprentice mason's degree, as performed in Texas, is similar, if not identical, to the theme of an entered apprentice mason's degree performed in South Carolina. The words may differ, some of the procedures or tactics may differ, but the theme and the lessons are the same. And that's the level I'm talking about, not the minutia of is it a of or a if, is it a this or a that. The words can be a distraction to the theme of the ritual sometimes.
So definitely more of a broad strokes kind of approach.
I think it has to be when you're talking about crossing grand jurisdictions and crossing different parts of the world. It has to be broad.
What's the purpose of learning the if there's a that there or not in a ritual in individual jurisdictions? What's the power or purpose behind that?
Well, some jurisdictions don't require you to learn anything. They require you to go through a degree, take an obligation, and write another check and have your next degree.
Well, that's what I'm saying. As far as the ritual, though, are those performed from memory in most jurisdictions?
I can't speak to that, honestly. As far as most jurisdictions across the world, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. The general rule of thumb that I have heard is that in English-speaking jurisdictions, you are almost always going to see it done from memory. It is not the case in non-English speaking jurisdictions, where you could see lodges that do it from memory or lodges that don't. Some jurisdictions actually require it to be read, for example. So
I've only sat in one lodge outside the United States, and it was an English-speaking lodge. And I saw a fellowcraft degree, and it was in Dublin, Ireland, and they read the entire thing.
Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So my question would be, I think, playing off of what Ritz said, is there a real value then to getting into the minutia of whether it's an if or an of within any specific one jurisdiction? What is the value of that? Is it as important as some would have us believe? Are you in that camp? And if so, why?
So, Eddie, I'm going to answer that from a Texas perspective. And I believe that it's important to have all the words the same if you're going to perform a graded degree or if you're going to sit for a certificate issued by the Grand Lodge showing your esoteric prowess. My issue there is graded degrees end up being about the degree team and the grade instead of about the initiatic experience of the candidate. And that's just part of the world we live in. The Grand Lodge started doing graded degrees I don't have my notes in front of me. I think somewhere right around 1969 to 1970, and that ballpark right there. I don't remember exactly which year. Prior to that, the emphasis on the standardization of the down to the word was not there. And if y'all even go a little bit further back, you guys and our listeners too, who may have attended Texas Masonicon last year, I gave an overview of the progression of our Texas ritual from 1858 to now. And in 1857, before the ritual was adopted, it was still being worked out. The Grand Master, Frank Sexton, came out and said the expectation that the ritual be standardized to the word, syllable, or letter was ridiculous. So when those guys were writing our ritual, writing may not be the right word, they were developing our ritual. The intent was never for it to be standardized down to the word.
Now, did he use the word ridiculous?
He used something very powerful. I think he's, I don't remember the word he said. It was something right along those lines I wouldn't have expected him to say. And it's printed in the proceedings. He basically said doing so, any grand lecturer who expects it to be done that way is just being vain and enforcing his words on the members of the lodges in his region.
So, obviously, we have to keep in mind, hey, we are trying to convey the spirit of the ritual, not necessarily the exact letter of the ritual. How do we balance the approach of trying to convey the spirit, or emphasizing conveying the spirit of the ritual, with potential loss of different words? An example that I think you've mentioned in the past has been the word purblind, or I might be saying that wrong. And how
that's why I have it, purblind.
Purblind, and that is a word that I can't remember. Did you say was it a regional variation, or was that just a chronological variation where we just lost it?
So I don't know exactly how it got lost, but sometime between 1858 and 2020, it's been redneckified from purblind to poorblind. And if you look in the glossary in the monitor, it even alludes to that. It says the actual spelling of it being P-U-R or P-O-O-R has been lost to time, or makes some reference similar to that. I don't have a monitor directly in front of me, but it alludes to that old pronunciation and the old definition. It's got nothing to do with the candidate being poor, as far as not having any money, and being blind, as far as not being able to see. It references him being uninformed or unenlightened, is what the original definition of that is.
Right. And so then kind of how do we balance not worrying about, getting everything 100% right versus worrying about loss of words over time, because that just seems like an example of entropy, right?
So I don't think you can balance it, Gabe, and here's the reason why. We've got about 65,000 master masons and some change in Texas. There's a large percentage of those guys who feel that the minutia is what's important. There's a large percentage of those guys that feel the theme is important. And there's a whole lot of guys that really don't care. So I think that's your balance. Will it ever be just laissez-faire, just, this is how we're going to do it? I don't think so. I don't think in the foreseeable future anyway. I think there's always going to be those guys in the lodge who emphasize word perfect, and we need those guys. Those guys are needed. We also have the guys in the lodge who understand the degree, understand a different component than just the words, and understand the philosophic and the esoteric symbolism and the teachings behind the veil of the degrees. And we need those guys. And then you got the guys who understand the evolution of, well, this is what it meant this is what it can mean to an ancient initiate. This is what it means to a 25-year-old, in 2020. And here's how it got from here to there. Then you got those guys who really don't care about any of it. They just want to do lodge fundraisers and give scholarships and community builder awards. And the great thing about our fraternity in Texas is every one of those people have a place, and it takes all those different kinds to make the lodges and the Grand Lodge work.
Yeah, I think that was one of the harder lessons for me to learn, is that all those people are right. They are. They're doing masonry, and there's a place for them. Because our truth seems to blind us to that. What we believe masonry, needs to be done this way.
Yeah, I was raised in a lodge. I wouldn't call it a country lodge. It had over 300 members, but it wasn't a big city lodge. But the emphasis was on the ritual and the work. And we did some community stuff, but not a lot. It took me getting out of Longview, Texas, and seeing what other lodges were doing before I had that realization that, wow, they're just as right as I am. We just have different approaches to it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're too diverse in Texas.
In terms of different approaches, what are your thoughts on jurisdictions that have adopted or that allow for multiple types of rituals? There are some jurisdictions that say, hey, we have only one ritual. There are some that say, hey, we have 4 standard rituals. And there are other jurisdictions that just say, hey, a district lecturer is just going to come visit you and make sure you're not doing anything crazy. But then they don't actually have a standardized ritual.
No, I am in favor of a standardized single ritual for our grand jurisdiction. It's kind of cool to go to New York or to Louisiana and see the Scottish Rite rituals, but that's a novelty to us, but it's part of their heritage. That's not part of our Texas heritage. So I think a standardized, uniformed, one York Rite-based ritual is what I'm in favor of here.
That's a good point, though. The heritage of our ritual, because that's our roots.
It is. Some will say our ritual is boring, and it may be compared with some other flamboyant rituals, but it's ours, and that we've developed from that. And the Texan in me just takes pride in that, and that's our ritual.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. It may be boring, but it's ours. I love it. Yeah.
Boring is not necessarily the right word I would use. I would say focused on fundamentals.
Yeah.
Well, it's not as flamboyant as others.
And Texas, that fits a Texan to a T. You know what I mean?
Does.
Just let me do my thing.
So one of the past masters of our lodge is also a Tennessee Mason. And he has explained how cut down the Texan ritual is in comparison to other jurisdictions that he's visited and been members of, and how we have not simplified it but streamlined the ritual pretty intensely.
So, but to understand why that is, Gabe, you got to look at when our ritual, what was going on whenever our ritual was adopted. So the Grand Lodge initially adopted the work of Tennessee. Then the following year, we adopted the work from Louisiana. And then we just kind of had a little hybrid for several years. And then you see the big pushes coming from the Northeast about wanting to form a united Grand Lodge of the United States. And Texas, the first convention, Texas was not a member of the United States. They were still a republic. So it didn't really apply to them. But the second Baltimore convention, Texas was a state, and we opposed that. And John Sayles in 1852 is the one that really had the first push about, hey, we need something that makes us truly sovereign and not subordinate, even if it appears that we are, to some other state by utilizing their ritual and their, and just copying their laws and bylaws and constitution and whatnot. So the first thing that got done was the Texas Constitution was redrafted, and the laws were rewritten. You may have heard the phrase or seen the phrase in the old proceedings about the Sayles Digest. And that was the rewriting of the laws to make them truly Texan. And then in 1855 is when we see the first committee on work elected, and their charge was to develop a ritual. And those members of the committee on work, they were the same guys who acted as legislatures and district circuit judges of the republic. So the ritual we have is streamlined because it was written by a bunch of legislatures, lawyers, and judges at the time that we were becoming or just become a state, and we're still trying to seek some individuality. We'd given up our sovereignty to join the Union a decade before, but they were trying to maintain some bit of sovereignty to our ritual to make it truly Texan. So it wasn't written by the philosophic thinkers or the esoteric philosophers of the time. It was written by judges and lawyers.
That sounds Texan too. That's interesting stuff. So I think we have discussed the discussion question quite thoroughly. I think everybody's got an opinion on the why, if they feel it's important or not, because like you said, we all have our place. So before we get chatting about the revised reception of the DDGM, you haven't been on since you've been elected, so you wanted to go over some info with the listeners. Proceed.
Yeah, so thanks, Rick. So I got elected in January of 2018. You guys had me on shortly thereafter. I don't remember exactly what month it was, but I'd wanted, not that anyone who had held my position before had done it wrong, not at all, but I looked at the schedule that Right Worshipful Jimmy Henley had, and the numbers that he put up as far as forum attendances, number of forums, and the esoteric exams. So I correlated what Right Worshipful Henley did, with what Right Worshipful Ricky Brown had. And Rick and I sat down and had lunch, and we talked about how he did his schedule and how he formulated his things. And so I sat down and want to take a different approach. So I actually sat down and mapped out on an actual map where the forums are, how many people they drew. Then I went through and started removing the duplicate attendees. So we got guys that may come to 10 or 15 forums a year, and they're getting counted as a new participant each time they show up. So when you take out all those duplicate attendees and look at the actual exam rates, we had some forums that are being done that may have a net attendance of 0 people because everybody there was a duplicate attendee from another forum at some other point during that same year.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to streamline that. And then the pass rate on the exams I thought was extremely low. So I took an approach to not encourage guys to take exams who weren't ready to do it. Don't just sit down and take an exam for the experience. If you're not ready, don't do it because you're going to embarrass yourself, make it awkward on someone to have to ask you to step out of the exam, and slow the exam down for the guys who and mess up that rhythm for the other guys taking it. So in doing that, our first year in 2018, we had a total of 616 butts came to a forum, butts in a seat in a forum. 165 of those guys were duplicate attendees, which means that 73% of that initial number, or 451 folks, attended a forum in 2018. That's up 100 people from the previous year, just by streamlining where we had them and spreading them out a little bit. That second year, that number increased. The net attendance, the gross attendance jumped from 616 to 752, with the net attendance being 525. So we're up almost 200 more people attending a forum in 2019 than did in 2017. And I say forum, not an exam. I put my heart and soul into the forums.
Mhm.
I want guys to come, be entertained, be comfortable, and learn something. And I give them my word. They're going to walk out there knowing something they didn't know when they came in. So we changed the format up and added, we're going to talk in a little bit about these trivia questions I've been doing on the Facebook page. I start every forum with a couple of scripted trivia questions just to get guys thinking about things outside the box and to have a little fun and to get everybody to lighten up a little bit and get them comfortable. Then I've added an education component to, instead of just demonstrating the ritual and saying this is how it is, we talk about this is why it's this way, and here's the easy way to remember how it got to be this way, and here's what it means. So we've done that. And by focusing on the forums, not focusing on the exams, and by encouraging guys who are ready to take the exam to take them, our pass rate for the exams has now fallen into a typical bell curve distribution that's not skewed. And that's not by any trying to make it that way, but just by putting processes in place to streamline it and to measure the effectiveness of it. That typical bell curve distribution is natural. That tells me that what I'm doing or what we're doing, not just me, I got a whole team of district instructors that help with that. Rick, you're one of them. So what we're doing is working. And that just kind of makes me feel good. I want to make sure the guys out there know that I'm not just going to a forum on a Saturday, talking for a few hours, doing an exam and going home. I go back to the house, open up the computer, and I crunch numbers and run statistics to see how effective we are. I just want everybody to know that.
Yeah, I think as we start doing that more and more, we can streamline the whole process.
I think so.
Yeah. Figure out where it's most effective and, you get the most bang for your buck. That's what we need to be doing. Well, maybe that's why we take minutes so we can go back and learn stuff.
Novel concept.
Yeah. Novel concept. Okay, so before we dig into again the temporary reception, which I keep saying temporary because this is something that's going to go away as soon as we go back to normal, correct?
So the committee on work, there's 5 of us, and we don't agree on a lot of things together. And I say that tongue in cheek, but we are all unanimous that we all feel that as soon as the Grand Master gives the thumbs up for lodges to go back to doing degree work, that we should revert back to the official district deputy Grand Master reception that's in the monitor. All of the quick background, all the district deputy Grand Masters received a memo from the Grand Master last week telling them that if they had not finished their first round of official visits before the pandemic started, to schedule those after May 25th. And he asked the Committee on Work if we could put together a revised temporary ceremony that meets the social distancing directives at that time of the governor, and which the Grand Master had mirrored. And we agreed, and we put together a ceremony and sent it out to all the deputies and all the district instructors last week. That's a temporary ceremony for the reception of the district deputy that meets the Grand Master's social distancing directive. But our belief is that it's as soon as we get the green light to go back to doing degree work, that we'll revert back to the official ceremony in the monitor.
Gotcha. So just temporary. But you did make a video about this. How would someone put their eyes on that?
So the video was made. It was posted on my Committee on Work Facebook page. And if you can just go to Facebook if you're not a member of that, and just in the search bar, just type Jim Rumsey Committee on Work. It'll pull up the group. It will ask you to answer a few questions. And that group is restricted to Texas Master Masons only. So not to hurt anybody's feelings, but if you're not a Texas Master Mason, don't try to join because you're just going to get a rejection from me. I pull the roster out, the master lodge roster, Grand Lodge roster, and verify everybody's membership before I accept them to the group. And on that group page, since this pandemic started, we had the cessation on doing forums. I wanted to put something together that kept the guys' interest in what we're doing as far as in the ritual. So I put together a series of videos. So there are now 14 videos in that series, and the alternate reception or the temporary reception ceremony is the 14th video, which is preceded by the 13th video, which is the standard reception.
Gotcha. Easy peasy. So you want to give us the rundown? Because it's quite simple, very logical. You keeping in mind that we've got to keep 6 foot apart. So with that in mind, I mean, it's actually very easy to remember if you want to walk us through the revised temporary process.
Absolutely. So I'm not going to go through the entire ceremony, but I'm going to highlight the differences. That's okay, Rick?
Perfect.
So the first difference, well, let me say this. The lodge has to be open on a Master Mason's degree. District Deputy reception has to take place in a Master Mason's lodge. If your lodge wants to conduct its business in a fellow craft Mason's lodge or inter-apprentice Mason's lodge, it's encouraged and empowered to do so. But you got to open a Master Mason's lodge for the reception of the deputy. And after he's received, then you can call down to the subordinate lodge. But it has to be a Master Mason's lodge. So the lodge opens after the entire opening ritual is completed. The deputy makes his exit from the lodge room. Traditionally done after the pledges to the flags, which generally happen after the opening ceremony is completed, but those are optional technically, so there's no requirement to pledge the flags, so I can't say you leave after the flags were pledged. But deputy leaves, the alarm is given at the door, and it's the first, and the deputy is announced by the Tyler and then announced by the junior deacon. The first deviation from the established ceremony that we see in this temporary ceremony is that the master is going to stand and gavel the lodge up. He will omit that phrase in his instructions that say the brethren will form 2 lines. We are not forming 2 lines for the reception during the COVID-19 pandemic. The master will gavel the lodge up. Everyone will remain standing at their stations, places, or seats during the reception ceremony. Second change, or second deviation, is that the lodge has the option to utilize the deacons and their rods in the reception ceremony. So they can use them or they can't use them. And the lodge is the sole judge as to whether or not they're going to use them or not. If the lodge is not going to use them, the master would omit that phrase from his instructions also. So he wouldn't say anything about forming 2 lines, and he wouldn't say anything about the deacons repairing to the door with their rods. The deacons should only be used if the lodge room is large enough and configured that the deacons can maintain 6 feet of clearance between everyone, including the deputy and the escort, during the ceremony, and they feel comfortable doing so. If they're not comfortable doing it, or if the lodge room is too small or too cramped that they would be within 6 feet, they should remain at their places. And if the deacons remain at their places, the rods stay in the holders and never get brought out, and the deacons just stand there like everybody else. The third deviation is only 1 escort instead of 2. So where traditionally we would have a senior escort and a junior escort, now we only have an escort. And that escort would take the place of what would be the senior escort. So everything the senior escort would do in the established ceremony, the escort does in the temporary ceremony. The fourth change is the escort does not touch the deputy. The escort opens the door, addresses the deputy, turns around, and walks in a straight line toward the altar. I say walk in a straight line, he wouldn't square anything. He's going to turn around and just walk like he would be walking between the lines if they were formed. So he just walks toward the altar. The escort's going to get to the altar. He's going to turn left when he gets to the altar, take a couple of steps and stop and turn right facing the worshipful master. The deputy is going to walk in the room and follow behind the escort. Escort's not going to touch him. He just walks behind the escort, maintaining 6 feet of clearance, and follows the escort to the altar. When the escort gets to the altar and makes his left hand turn, then stops and turns to his right, the deputy just stops centered on the altar. The deacons, which would normally be beside the escorts, they usually have 5 guys. You'd have 2 deacons, 2 escorts, and a deputy, shoulder to shoulder, all abreast, walking to the altar. You can't do that with the escort and the deputy being 6 feet across from each other, facing the worshipful master at the altar. So that the deacons have to stop behind the deputy and the escort if you're going to use them in order to maintain that 6 feet of clearance. And that gets kind of awkward. It's easy to say and talk about, but when you practice it and do it, it's a little bit awkward. So my recommendation to all, if you're listening and you're a worshipful master of a Texas lodge, my recommendation is to not use the deacons for this ceremony. Even though you can, I recommend you not doing it because it's just awkward and cumbersome. So the next change is after all the introductions are made, all the signs and whatnot are given, the escort escorts the deputy to the east in the same way they got to the altar. They just walk single file to the east. No touching, no handshaking when they get there. The escort kind of just steps aside, careful not to break the pass between the altar or the Bible and the master. The deputy ascends the dais, maintains 6 feet of clearance from the worshipful master, but still somehow executes a gavel exchange. The deputy seats the lodge and sits in the east, but does not, he sits on the master's right, but does not sit right next to him. So lodges are going to have to make a small adjustment, or may have to make a small adjustment in their east, that the deputy doesn't sit right next to the worshipful master, that he sits at least 6 feet away. And that's the temporary reception ceremony in a nutshell.
Simple. Which you sent out instructions to all, well, I know district instructors under your.
Yeah, so yeah, all the 55 district instructors in the DFW, Northeast Texas, North Central Texas, Waco region, got an email from me with those detailed instructions. And those same instructions also went to all the district deputies in the state. So if you're listening and you have any questions at all about this, please contact your district instructor first. And if you can't get any resolution there, go to your district deputy and then come to your committee on work member.
Sounds good. And I can attest, I know that when we did this on the video, the using the deacons is very tricky. We were in a small lodge room, so it didn't really work that well anyways. But even at that point, they've got to have some strong wrist to hold that thing out 6 feet away from that escort, because it was hard to stay.
So when you're thinking about it and talking about it, you can visualize it. It doesn't seem like it's difficult, but when you do it, maintaining 6 feet from both the escort and the deacon and the district deputy, who are 6 feet apart themselves, and then trying to maintain 6 feet both laterally and front to back, it gets tricky. And and we had some help with that video, and Justin Duty was if I recall correctly, was the senior deacon. And he was I'm not gonna say he was struggling, but it was just awkward on everyone on how to position you, because you're in a grid. You're trying to maintain 6 feet front to back and 6 feet left to right. It just got kind of awkward.
Yeah, that's a lot of square footage, especially when you're talking about big boys like us.
Oh, come on now.
So let's chat about your Masonic trivia. You kind of alluded to the inspiration, to keep interest going. Was there anything other than that kind of got you going with that, or was it just out of boredom and that?
So it's a combination of several factors, I think, Rit. So the first, so get everybody up to speed on my Committee on Work Facebook page. I don't remember what date, but I started doing a daily trivia Monday through Friday, not on weekends. And I ask a trivia question. Then the next day I'll answer it and ask the next question. And those first 20 or so questions I already had scripted out. I had put together it's going to sound really awkward to some folks. I had put together a Masonic ritual trivia bowl game with the assistance of Dave McCann down in Waco. We were going to do a trivia bowl, ritual trivia bowl for their MWSA, little competition amongst the lodge members of their MWSA. That kind of fell through. We never really got it off the ground. So I had, all these trivia questions in a queue. So I thought I'll just start using them here just to generate some discussion, keep people engaged, keep masonry on people's mind, and have a good time with it. Not to be too serious. No negative discussions back and forth like there are some other Masonic Facebook group pages that the discussions get pretty lively. It's very tame, just positive interaction with the guys. And it just kind of picked up and went from there. After I finished those first 20 or so questions, I was having a good time with it. So I just picked up the law book and picked up the monitor and picked up Lightfoot's commentaries and some old Grandmaster decisions and started just finding trivia questions. And the more I dug into it, the more I found there's a lot of stuff that you and me and most of our Texas listeners have always been told. This is what this means. This is how we do this, and here's why. And when you go back and look at the old law and the old Grandmaster decisions or the old Lightfoot commentaries and the old Lightfoot monitor, we've been told wrong. And we've probably been told wrong for a couple of generations, and just no one ever thought to look up what's the daggum book say.
Yeah.
So a lot of these questions, I get accused of being, of asking trick questions, but they're not trick questions. They're stuff that we all either think we know or have been doing one way, but in reality, we're doing it contrary or been told contrary to what it really was. To the point where I had one brother today even tell me, I'm not going to say what question it is or who it was, but I posted a question today, and it was, is this permissible? And gave a scenario. And that brother said, well, that's the way I did it, so I sure hope it's permissible. But if I've learned anything from this stupid game, is that I don't know anything. And I asked him about it, and it was all tongue in cheek. And he was actually being positive about how this has opened his eyes to how much he really thought he knew about just law stuff that we all thought we knew. That, wow, there's actually a Grandmaster decision in 1958 that says we're supposed to be doing it this way. Why are we doing it the other way? So it's now turned into a challenge for me to find questions that challenge, the folks that are participating. And we get, anywhere from 100 to 200 people vote on any particular poll question. But I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, I'm having a good time researching these trivia questions. I'm learning from these trivia questions. If I saw some of these questions posted that I didn't look up, I wouldn't have answered them correctly.
Oh yeah, there's no way.
Yeah, I am the farthest thing from holier than thou. I mean, I'm an average guy who's been told the same things we've all been told.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be completely transparent and honest. Now, I would have gotten a lot of these wrong, but it's the process of learning through it that I think. So my point is, if you're having a good time and you're interacting and you're keeping Freemasonry on the forefront, that's my intent. If we learn something, that's a bonus, but we're just here to have a good time on these trivia questions. And I'm going to wrap it up. We get set back to work for stated meetings on May 25th. The trivia questions will come to an end, I think, on June 1st, which will be the 50th question, and that'll be the end of the series on those.
So,
Well,
Jim,
maybe we can coax more out of you.
Go ahead, Billy.
so I was looking at one, and I wanted to clarify just to see if I understood correctly. It was the question you had about which globe is on the left of the master's, from the master's perspective. And I thought I saw in there that there was a comment that the diagram in the commentary is actually incorrect.
So I didn't see that comment, but if you look at the old drawings that date back to Jeremy Cross, who did a lot of the illustrations that were published in later revisions of Webb's monitor.
Okay.
That in 1859, when William Martin Taylor wrote the first Texas monitor, he utilized a lot of Cross's diagrams So the first piece of the Texas monitor shows the diagrams from the master's vantage, the terrestrial globe on the left, the celestial globe on the left, the terrestrial globe on the right from the master's vantage. I didn't look at Lightfoot's, but the Taylor monitor has that. The Taylor Hamilton monitor has that, and the current Texas monitor has that all the way through from 82 through the 2017 revision, which is what I have, and they all show that. I really thought the Lightfoot manual has that as well. If you'll give me 30 seconds, I got one sitting on the table about 15 feet from me. Let me go look at it.
Okay. Well, the point I was trying to make though is it looked like even the diagram that we have as an example was incorrect.
So the official diagram is one published in the current revision of Texas Monitor. That's what we have to go by.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from the master's vantage, the celestial globe on the left, the terrestrial globe on his right.
Okay.
You don't sound satisfied, Billy.
Well, because I thought the answer was that the candidate should have the celestial globe on his right, which I guess would be the master's left.
No, that's correct.
Okay.
But that diagram, though, that shows the winding stairway, Billy, shows it from the candidate's perspective, not the master's perspective.
Ah,
So
okay. So
it's going to be opposite of what the master sees is opposite of what the candidate sees, which is the diagram depicts the globes and the stairway from the candidate's perspective.
okay, so that may be where the confusion is coming in. Is the diagram is shown from the candidate's perspective instead of master's perspective? I have this fear I'm not making sense here.
Well, it makes total sense to me because I can see the picture in my head because in the monitor it seems like it has the candidate and what would be the senior deacon at the bottom of the staircase, right?
That's correct, and that's from the candidate's perspective. And the question I ask it intentionally from the master's perspective to make people think about that drawing has to be backwards.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so you would be looking at it from the other end of the other end of the room. All right, Billy, I'm going to move on now.
All right,
you sound quasi-satisfied now.
So Billy, I just picked up I went into the other room and grabbed my book of Lightfoot's commentaries. And there's not even a diagram in Lightfoot's commentaries about that.
Okay.
Now, in Lightfoot's manual, it shows the typical columns, globes, and stairway, but there's nothing in the commentaries about it.
Okay, I may have misread it or picked up something incorrect.
Didn't you see the post from Pete Norman?
Mm-hmm.
I did. I saw your response too.
Yeah. When in doubt, refer to Pete Norman.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest ones that, and it's something I learned maybe 2 years ago or something, I was floored by it, that really highlights, what we've been told and what is actually law is one of the most recent one, question 41, is it permissible for multiple new entered apprentice Masons to demonstrate proficiency in the trial lecture? Basically round robin style. That's the way I did it, allegedly, I guess I should say.
So let me ask you this, Rick. When did you go through your degrees?
It's 2004.
So you're okay. So in 2008, Grandmaster Tommy Griffin issued a decision that specified that every person who's demonstrating proficiency has to be asked every question and give an answer to every question. So if you do a round robin, if you have 2 guys, then each guy's only getting asked every other question. If you have 3 guys, they're getting asked every third question and so forth. And that's contrary to the 2008 Grandmaster decision, which says every person has to be asked every question and give an answer. So if you did it prior to 2008, technically you're okay.
I'll take that. It seems like the law was somewhat. Seems like the way the article's written in the law book was somewhat clear on the fact that the candidate has to receive every question or something like that. Has to be asked every question. It didn't clarify that he has to give every answer. I think
Right.
in the law.
And that I want to focus on the Entered Apprentice for a minute. The Entered Apprentice trial lecture actually goes back to 1921. So in 1921 is when it became law that the entire trial lecture, all 3 sections, have to be demonstrated by a candidate. So prior to that, all 3 sections of the catechism existed. It wasn't really enforced or standardized that that's what a candidate had to do to demonstrate proficiency. And that was the phrase they used, the entire trial lecture or the whole trial lecture. Apparently that generated some confusion about 100 years ago. So that led to a Grandmaster decision in 1924, which defined the entire trial lecture as all 3 sections of the Entered Apprentice trial lecture. So starting in 1921, they have to do all 3 sections. We changed that, or we didn't change it. We amended that slightly. I don't remember what year, Rick, you may, been a few years back, that we could do it in sections or in sections instead of just doing all 3 at one time. You could turn in just your first section, third section, or second section.
Mid-90s, I think.
No, it was later than that. It's later than that. It was after I became a Mason.
Hmm.
But anyway, it wasn't until 2008 that Grandmaster Griffin gave the opinion or the decision, not opinion, decision that specified each candidate demonstrating proficiency has to be asked every question and give an answer to every question. In Grandmaster decisions, a lot of our readers or viewers may not understand. Grandmaster's decisions are different from Grandmaster's proclamations. An official Grandmaster's decision carries the same weight as a statute, is enforceable as a statute, and remains in effect until overturned by either a vote by resolution at Grand Lodge or a subsequent Grandmaster's decision.
Well, that makes sense. We kind of preach on those Grandmaster's decisions quite a bit.
So, I mean, in all reality, if you want to take a legal look at it, our book of laws is the law, and the Grandmaster decisions are basically the case law or the court opinions on those statutes, and both are enforceable.
No, the clarifications of the law. Yeah, and when you read them, they make sense like that. And of course, we do ratify that at Grand Lodge too. So that is voted on by the Grand West, the Grandmaster's.
It is, and the Grandmaster's report. Yeah. We approved the Grandmaster's report, which has all that in it.
No, but I did find that interesting that it wasn't quite 50-50 on the answers of that one of yes and no, is it permissible? But it was pretty close to show how widespread that is. And I know a lot of folks are out there kind of like, I've done it that way, but I don't think it's legal. I've heard, you know what I mean? So it's much more common.
And no one wants to throw their lodge under the bus.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like you're going to have Form 1s flying for this, because we've got to admit it and talk about these things, and get better from it.
Yeah. Admit our shortcomings, learn, and let's put a plan in place that makes sense to move forward and do it right.
Yeah. I mean, because no one person can know that whole law book. It's a volunteer organization. We don't get paid to know that stuff. So. I like the number 40 that you did too. And this is where I think you get accused of doing trick questions. The plumb, square, and level are first introduced and explained to a candidate in which degree. And I know in my mind, I immediately go to working tools.
So I think we all did. I did as well. But this is where my eyes have been opened to the full form, or what some folks call the long form, lectures of all of our degrees. So I learned, whenever I was a young Master Mason, I learned the long form Master Mason's lecture, which details, all the emblems on the Master's carpet and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But never learned or never heard anyone give the full form Entered Apprentice lecture or the full form Fellowcraft lecture until several years later. there's a lot of information that's contained in those full form lectures that the candidate is intended for the candidate to understand as part of that degree, and we just don't do it anymore. And one of those is the plumb, square, and level. And we all immediately go to the fellowcraft degree because those are the working tools of the degree, and there's an explanation given, at the end of the degree, which is in the monitor, about what those working tools mean. But if you look at the full form lecture of the entered apprentice degree, the plumb, square, and level are first introduced to the candidate as the immovable jewels of the lodge, and there's instruction given, explanations given as to why they are.
Yeah.
So that's the first time that the plumb, square, and level are introduced and explained to the candidate, is in the entered apprentice degree, not the fellowcraft degree.
No, and I think it's so, because I know at Grand Lodge I get asked all the time, why are the wardens passing off their jewels? And it's like, yeah, those jewels don't move from that spot when that lodge is
That's
open.
right.
And we learn that as EAs, but that's only if you read the monitor,
Well, now that's the way it is now. And several lodges, and my home lodge is one of them. We don't give you a monitor at all. I mean, not till you're a master mason. So, several lodges give monitors to entered apprentices, and several don't. And some lodges never give a candidate monitor. Period. He's up to his own to learn that it exists, and then buy one, and then figure out how to use it and what it means. And that's that's kind of discouraging. It's kind of cutting the candidate's experience short a little bit, because all that stuff that we don't talk about anymore in those degrees are still part of that degree, and they shed light on things as he moves forward. Now, the Masonic philosopher in me, the esoteric ritualist and whatnot, understands that you don't fully master the entered apprentice degree until you've had all three degrees, and you can sit back and look in retrospection the lessons of the degrees that tie into each other. So an entered apprentice Mason can never truly master the entered apprentice degree, but we shouldn't cut him short and not give him all the tools he needs to understand as much as he can before he progresses to the next degree.
No, I think at the very least, the glossary and the monitor, which I had a monitor in my possession, but never looked to see if there even was a glossary until years after there's words in there that mean different things than charity's the perfect example.
Charity,
yeah. It's a different meaning to us as Masons when we're saying it in our ritualistic context. And you would never know that if you didn't have the glossary of our ritual and our, the way the words are supposed to be used. So it's an invaluable tool for sure. So number 10, that was really the only one I got in on, and it sucked me in. I laughed about it because it was one that, you worded perfectly to where I was like, yeah, I got this one, and went in and clicked yes. You put a candidate may elect to take his obligation on the book of his choosing if his religious beliefs are not supported by the Holy Bible. And, that's a battle I've fought quite a few times throughout my career as a Mason, especially in the earlier days. So I was like, oh yeah, that's true. And of course you throwing a
look at the numbers on that one. So 226 folks said true, 61 said false, and the answer is false.
Yeah.
And I think the answer that I gave on that question, I think I put it in something along the lines of, the book on my nightstand at the time was the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. And if I'm an entered apprentice candidate and I show up at your lodge on Thursday night to receive an entered apprentice degree, and I bring the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin with me, are you going to let me take my obligation on it?
No, but what constitutes? Is there are we going to use our best judgment there, or are we going off a major text?
So I don't have it all in front of me right now, so I'm going to paraphrase this next part, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So on the petition for the degrees, the guy the man answers three questions. Do you believe in God? Do you believe in the immortality of the human soul? And do you believe in the divine authentication of the Holy Scriptures. So a candidate's religious beliefs have to meet those three criteria. His religious beliefs have to believe in a God. It has to be that that liturgy of that religion has to have a belief in the immortality of the human soul, and that the Holy Scriptures of that religion have been divinely authenticated. Benjamin Franklin's autobiography has not been divinely authenticated. So, lack of a better phrase, it's in Texas. Now, this varies slightly from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So I know we have a lot of listeners that are not from Texas, but in Texas, it's got to be the official holy book of the religion that believes in the existence of God and the immortality of the human soul, and that holy book has been authenticated by the divine of that religion.
So like a clergy or something like that?
Man, I'm going to say use your best judgment on that.
Gotcha.
That's the investigation, but your investigation committee should have those conversations with the guy well in advance, because I mean you got to understand his religious beliefs pretty thoroughly to understand whether or not that they meet the criteria for him to be eligible for membership.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be learning those things to not of his degree.
Well, and it's gotten so taboo to talk about it, and especially as Masons, politics and religion's off limits. But I mean, it's important to know what book he's going to take his obligation on.
Yeah, so I think I think there's a fine line, and it's a very fine line. But I think there is a fine line between discussing religion, as far as my beliefs versus your beliefs, and discussing are his beliefs compatible with our fraternity? And I think we have to do the due diligence on that latter without crossing that line into I believe differently than you believe and leading it into argument.
Yeah.
So there is a slight variation of this. I know this isn't actually the discussion question itself, but it reminds me of a talk that we had sometime, I guess about a year or two ago, when we were doing some research to try and figure out if a candidate is of a belief that uses another holy scripture like the Tanakh or the Quran. They may not be able to choose the book that they're obligated upon, but they are able to choose the passage that the book is open to when they're obligated.
So if their religious belief is anything other than a holy Bible, they can have the book of their faith on the altar for the obligation. And where our rituals specify what chapter and verse the Holy Bible is open to during our degrees, any other book, any other holy book that used for an obligation can be open to the passage of the candidate's choosing. The lodge gets no say-so in what scripture is open to if it's not the Holy Bible. Now, if they're this is where it gets there's a gray area here. If you have a brother who practices Judaism and supports the Old Testament, if he chooses to have that Bible on the altar and not a different book, that latitude is not there. It's got to be open to the chapter and verse as prescribed in the statutes.
Gotcha. Pretty clear. And you said obligation, but that their book of their faith will stay on during the whole ritual, correct?
So it goes on after the opening ritual is completed. So it can't be on the altar during the opening of the lodge.
Correct. Yeah.
After the lodge is open, that other holy book goes on the altar before the degree starts, or when the degree starts. Right before the degree starts, that book goes on the altar.
Gotcha.
And stays on the altar for the duration of the degree. After the degree is over, that book comes off the altar.
To close.
And in Texas, the Holy Bible never leaves the altar. The other book of faith is positioned on the altar where you have both books on the altar. Both books opened. 2 sets of square compasses, one for each book, in the same configuration. And the Holy Bible is slid eastward on the east side of the altar, and the book of his faith on the west side of the altar to be used for the obligation. Lodges in Texas have no obligation to have multiple books of faith in their library. So if you don't have a book of faith for the candidate, he needs to be instructed to bring his book the day or the evening or the morning of his degree to be obligated upon. But the lodge is required to have 2 sets of square and compasses, one for his book and one for the Holy Bible.
Yeah, that's another one of those little laws that slip by you because you've got to have it for the ritual specific where his hands are placed, and then it's got to stay on the the Holy Bible. So yeah, you got to have both sets. That's another one I've learned here recently.
And that is spelled out in the statutes. That's not a committee on work opinion. That's in the statutes.
Well, but he's obligated with his hands on the book of his faith.
Correct.
Even though the Bible is located to the east of that book on the altar, which is an interesting point because I've been a guest senior deacon in a lodge before where we did initiate a Jewish brother, and I was told no, his hands still, the book is open, but his hands still go on the Bible. And we had a discussion about that. And of course, as a guest, I did as I was asked, but I did make sure that the next time we spoke that I clarified that for the next time that happened.
And you are correct. He takes the obligation on his book, or the book of his faith.
I'd say you're double correct for not getting in a fist fight either about it.
I agree. I do agree. And I'll go one step further. I think it's Article 397. That's going to come back to haunt me because I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's 397 that says during the degree, including the lectures and teaching the candidate or the new Mason his esoteric lesson or his trial lectures after the degree, if he takes his obligation on the book of his faith, that's not the Holy Bible, you don't say the words Holy Bible anywhere in the degree. You substitute Holy Bible with the phrase book of your faith or book of my faith.
Yep. That's another one that I was taught different for years and years. But I mean, that's clear as day. There's no misconstruing that when you actually read the law.
But I'm gonna come to the defense of some of these lodges too. They may have never come across this. So you may have a lodge that's been in existence for, let's just say, 100 years, and they've never had a petitioner or a candidate that subscribed to another faith openly. So they may have never experienced that. So, I mean, there's some latitude there because they've never had to do it. That it's kind of not something you pay attention to. Whereas you get into the metropolitan areas where it's more common. So, I mean, I'm not defending them, but there is a defense there if they've never experienced it.
No, and my thing is that probably 95% of the time, all these mistakes are done because they didn't know, and how could you know it all? There are very few people that are like, I'm not saying that because only this book, that although it does happen, it's few and far between.
I agree. I believe that most of those errors are done because that's the way they were taught, and they just don't. And there's no malice or ill intent, involved. I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like you feel like crawling under a rock when you realize you did it wrong.
And you also don't want to embarrass somebody in front of everybody.
Yeah,
right. Like Billy's example, it's better just to take the high road sometimes and say, okay, I'll do it your way.
For sure. All right, gentlemen. Did y'all have some you added? I think you did. Where's mine?
Yeah, I had one that I added. It was 31. A stated meeting is held at the regular time of 7:30 on the first Tuesday of the month. Electricity goes out, and the meeting is winding down after 9 p.m. Worshipful Master says, hey, we're not going to officially close or anything like that. And the crux of the question is, does the lodge automatically close at midnight, right? There's kind of like old wives' tale or urban legend that gets tossed around in Texan Masonry where lodges close automatically at midnight, which is not the case. So
that is not the case. And this is something that I was taught early on, that this very scenario is something that very easily could have happened in my lodge, because my lodge had that belief or the old timers in the lodge said, lodge closes at midnight. So if we did a ceremony on an evening, a late evening ceremony, and then we did the same thing open. So if we did I'm going to just make this up. I'm not sure if this actually happened this way or not, but say we did a community builder award on a Friday night, had a dinner at the lodge, presented the award, or maybe even a scholarship award or Lamar Medal award to open meeting. And then the master would say, we're not going to call back, to labor from refreshment and close because the lodge will close at midnight. And that's a pretty common thought across the state. But our statutes simply don't support that lodges automatically close at midnight, with 3 exceptions. There's 3 times that a lodge does close automatically at midnight. The first time is if it's on a Saturday night. You cannot conduct any business after midnight on a Saturday. Okay, so no business conducted on a Saturday after midnight, so the lodge closes then. If the next day is not a Sunday, but is either December 27th or June 24th, either the St. John's days or Saints John Day, then the lodge automatically closes. Any other time, there is no prohibition to conduct business after midnight, period. Now, the premise of that question was that someone said the lodge has to close at midnight because stated meetings are held on a Tuesday, and after midnight it becomes Wednesday, and we can't meet on Wednesdays. And that was the premise of that question, which was false. Lodges do not close on midnight on Tuesdays. Now, there are some other thoughts on that, that on the actual scenario that was given, that the lodge would have closed as soon as a quorum of members was no longer present in the lodge room. And I'm of that belief. So if you don't have a quorum to conduct business, you don't have a lodge opened anymore. At Grand Lodge, we have to establish a quorum before we can open Grand Lodge. And if you guys will think about it, we have to get a report from the credentials committee to ensure that the quorum is still met prior to every vote we take or ballot we take. So some argue that you got to have a quorum to open a meeting, but not a quorum to maintain a meeting. Then there's some that say, well, you got to have a quorum to maintain a meeting. As soon as that quorum is no longer there, you no longer have a meeting. So I'm not going to debate that with anybody because I really don't know. I know what I think is right, but I don't know the answer to that. So, but for the answer to the question is, lodges do not automatically close at midnight.
I remember there was a long discussion on there about, does the lodge automatically close if it was open prior to midnight on a Sunday? Would it extend? Because there was, I guess, almost like a debate over the actual spelling of the law. Does it mean you just can't open a lodge on Sunday for the purpose of conducting business, or does it automatically shut down at midnight?
And my understanding on that, Billy, is you can't have any lodge opened except for a Lodge of Sorrow on a Sunday, unless you're going to open a Master Mason's Lodge specifically for a burial. So if you have a Master Mason's Lodge open for a stated meeting, you can't call it to refreshment on a Saturday night and call it and then call it back to labor on Monday to finish that meeting. It would have closed.
Yeah, and Jim, just to clarify, it's your assumption about the quorum is correct, not necessarily because of a quorum, but because of officers present. So the actual wording of the law that you're thinking of specifies that if the worshipful master, both wardens, all past masters of the lodge are gone, it can't be opened, and if it's already opened, it's automatically closed.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily based off of the 357 quorums, but it's based off of officerships.
If you legally have established in your laws what a quorum constitutes, it seems like there's a lawyer could tell us if that quorum's broke, if that meeting's still in session, because all kinds of. I think about a board of directors. A company, all kinds of shady things could happen if a quorum wasn't there. So it seems like you establish a quorum in order for business to be done. If it's not there, it's not met. But that's a whole nother discussion. That's what I love about these trivia questions, and the law itself.
And they're worded. I mean, I'm not an expert wordsmith, but they're worded to generate thought and make you open the daggum book and see, okay, what does this actually say, or does it say anything?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also interesting that if you did have lodges automatically closing at midnight, let's say hypothetically you had that Tuesday meeting, dinner went long, the meeting went long, there was some hot heated debate or something, and the lodge is open until all hours of the night. Well, would that automatically mean that at midnight that they would have to reopen at 12:01? That the lodge magically closed while they're in the room, and then at 12:01 suddenly they have to say, "Oh, stop! We've got to reopen the lodge because it's after midnight."
And Evie, I would argue that we have a statute that says once a stated meeting is closed, it cannot be reopened.
We do have a statute that says that.
Yeah. So the idea right there, it falls. It seems to me it would fall on its face logically, because if we do have a meeting past midnight, then it does wacky things.
Yeah, it's got to keep going. Yeah, it has to. I remember I don't know what I'd asked you about or what I said that you'd asked me a long time ago. Well, what happens after midnight? And I said, "Oh, a lodge is automatically closed," and you're like, "No, it's not." And I remember going home and scouring the law book like, I'm gonna get Rumsey on this one. And
just don't feed a magpie after midnight.
And I'm looking at the quorum requirements. The way that the law is phrased, it would seem that the quorum is only, the way I have it, the quorum's only required to open the lodge.
Yeah, but see, I think that would fall under like a general legal statute. That if you establish a quorum in order for a meeting to take place, I mean, that's like, what are you going to do if a quorum isn't there? You can't vote on anything.
Well, I have to assume that because even though we're operating under Masonic law, all of our organizations are handled by civil law, under whatever articles of the U.S. code.
No, if you ask the Grand Secretary, he'll tell you directly that general corporate law applies to all the Grand Lodge and all subordinate lodges.
Yeah,
right. So it would automatically assume that anything that has been established in U.S. case law regarding quorums being present for board meetings and votes would also have to apply automatically to our votes.
Right. And so the definition of quorum is the number of officers or members of a body that when duly assembled is legally competent to transact business, or the minimum number of members of an assembly or society that must be present at any of its meetings to make the proceedings of that meeting valid. So I would argue the meeting is not necessarily closed. You can still have the meeting remain open. It just is the transactions of the meeting are invalid, but the meeting itself is still ongoing.
I guess you could say that. That's splitting hairs, though.
It is splitting hairs, but it's kind of a fun exercise to say, like, okay, like disregarding the practicality of it, like how can we twist this up as much as possible?
Well, but if the purpose of the meeting is to do business, and the business can't be conducted, then that would presuppose that the business is now done, and the meeting serves no purpose after that point.
All right. So, hey, Gabe.
Yes.
So I want you to go in the law book, go from Article 229, which what you were referencing a moment ago. Mm-hmm. Go to 333.
333. Hold on one second.
It says, at stated meetings, after the opening, after a quorum being established, you can proceed with the order of business. So that would imply if there's no quorum established, you cannot proceed with the order of business.
So wherever that quorum's broke,
Yeah,
business stops.
it's at stated meetings after the open of the lodge, the order of business. This is true. So that I think the distinction that I'm making though is the ability to conduct business versus open or close. And I
So,
think
hang on, but we're talking about, hang on, but we're being specific about a stated meeting, which is to conduct business. That's the only reason for a stated meeting is to conduct business.
Otherwise, a meeting shouldn't go over unless you just start late.
Yeah.
If you did an 11:30 degree.
So if you break a quorum, you cannot continue with your business. You don't have a lodge opened anymore.
But how many lodges actually open a stated meeting for the purpose of conducting a degree?
I've never seen it done in Texas.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my point, is that because Rit just referenced like a degree going long or something like that, but we're talking in that particular article, it's only stated meetings are, so a called meeting for the purpose of doing something else besides the stated meeting doesn't fall under that particular article's jurisdiction.
No, and the question on the trivia post was it specified a stated meeting.
Right, exactly. That was kind of my point.
Rabbit holes, I'm telling you. That law book is full of them.
Yeah.
We could do this all night.
Yeah, and again, that's delving into the practical versus the letter of the law, and so I think in most cases, like, we understand like functionally how things should probably go, but there's a little bit of rules lawyering involved, I think, which I think that's half the fun.
At the end of the day, though, the trivia question was, does the lodge automatically close at midnight? The answer
Which is no, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So would it then, per your interpretation, would it then close automatically Saturday/Sunday at midnight?
My interpretation, my personal opinion, is that as soon as you don't have a quorum in that room, that lodge is closed.
Okay.
Gotcha. But if you did have a quorum, just saying you stayed in the lodge room for, 38 hours or something, it would close Saturday night, 11:59, as soon as it hit midnight Sunday morning, right?
Correct.
So here's an interesting question, and this has less to do with that particular question than something you just brought up. How would that be annotated in the note? I mean, in the minutes, that as soon as the quorum broke, that the meeting was over? Because ostensibly you should have the secretary saying, in the notes, the meeting was over at this time, and the lodge was closed. So are there any regulations for the secretary specifically stipulating how that should be annotated?
Well, I mean, let's go one step further than that, Evie, just for a moment. I want to chase a different rabbit for a minute before we get to that, okay? What's a quorum for a Master Mason's lodge?
3.
Article 229 tells us it's 3, right? 3 Master Masons who are members of that lodge.
Right.
So let's take that for a moment. Let's say that there's only 5 guys at the meeting to begin with. 3 of them are members of that lodge, or 2 of them are visitors. If one of those members of the lodge leaves, you now only have 2 members of that lodge present and 2 visitors. So you have the number for a quorum, but you don't meet the definition of having a quorum because you don't have 3 Master Masons that belong to that lodge present. Now, can one of the visitors pro tem a warden station? Absolutely, they can. And you can have the indispensable numbers still met, but you don't have the 3 members of that lodge. Therefore, you can't do anything. So an entered apprentice degree or lodge or a fellowcraft lodge is a little bit different because it just requires, for entered apprentice lodge, it only requires 1 Master Mason of that lodge to be present. So you could have Billy Hamilton present at Fort Worth Lodge and 6 visiting EAs and have a quorum to open the entered apprentice lodge.
Oh, yeah, because there's only 1 master, 6 EAs. It doesn't specify they got to be members because they can't vote anyway.
They
Well-
can't vote anyway. Yeah. So my question, I mean, so think about that. If the master is the only master mason there, can you conduct business? Because no one can make a motion, no one can second a motion, and he's the only one that can vote.
Right. Well,
Mm.
and there's a further stipulation there that he would have to be either an installed warden, worshipful master, or past master. Otherwise, you couldn't even have the meeting to begin with.
And that's why I used you as an example. So you're the senior warden of 148.
Mhm.
But think about that. If you have that, there's no one to make any motions because the presiding officer can't make motions. The presiding officer can't second motions unless it's an election. So you can't even conduct business with a quorum present if that were the case. And that's
Yeah,
a rabbit hole that just dawned on me.
Well, that sounds like something that just didn't get cleaned up when we transitioned back to being able to open in an EA.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, because I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, prior to 2000, you always had to open a Master Mason's Lodge first, and you had to have 3 Master Masons or 3 members of the lodge present first.
Yeah, that's interesting. That really, adds more reasoning.
Like I said, I just thought about that. So that's what a midnight podcast conversation will do for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, in that lens, because I'm a big fan of calling down as opposed, and you're the one that really brought the light to me that if you need to go to refreshment and you're opened in an EA the optional way, you can't do that. There's no,
Cannot do it.
yeah, there's no going to refreshment in an EA. So if you open your stated on that and you, for whatever reason, need to go to refreshment, you're up a creek.
So what's interesting about the example of the 3 master masons with 2 visitors is if you're one of the master masons that's a member of that lodge, God forbid you have to go take a bathroom break because you shut down the lodge.
Yeah.
Well, that
You
was
can't
kind of
leave the
my,
room.
and that was kind of my question about like how it gets annotated in the notes that something like that happens, or excuse me, in the minutes, because that would be an important factor. If the secretary is, so I go home and suddenly the quorum is lost in a Master Mason's degree. How is how is that getting annotated? What is the process for back annotating it? It seems like it's a
Well, I can tell you,
fraught with problems besides just doing it at a stated meeting when we say amendments and stuff like that.
Secretary's notes, lodge closed because Rick had to pee.
Exactly. That seems like that would be a problem.
I mean, as a former secretary, really, you got to use discretion because you want to include historical reasoning. But I mean, you would say something as simple as there no longer being a quorum present, the lodge was automatically closed.
Yeah, I am a current secretary, and I would say this, I wouldn't say anything derogatory to anybody, but you also want to preserve it for if someone wants to look at our minutes 100 years from now, you want to know what happened. And hey, this random scenario actually did happen here at this lodge in 2020.
Yeah.
And I would just say something along those same lines Rich said, due to accident circumstances, a quorum no longer being present, the lodge was closed.
Well,
And you would just leave, you would leave out lodge closed in due and ancient form because it wasn't closed in due form. It was just closed.
yeah, and I've read in old minutes to where they've referenced, after a heated discussion, this or this took place. So if that was the reason somebody walked out, you might put something like that in there, something appropriate. But yeah, you don't get derogatory in your minutes. You're impartial. You're just recording history. But that would be interesting.
So to answer your question, Evie, I would say in the most astute yet polite manner possible.
Gotcha.
We'll get you trained up to be secretary just yet, Abby.
No, sir. No, sir. Don't even. No, I knew you were going to go there. No, sir.
Yes. Welcome to the dark side.
Do you feel the impending doom?
I feel very attacked right now.
Just like a huge sense of cosmic dread.
Billy, I think you had a question you wanted to go over real quick. What was that one?
Right. So this one, the reason I bring this up is because only one person answered correctly. So I thought we needed to discuss it here. And it was question number 30. In the installation ceremony of a lodge, the worshipful master is charged to be obedient to the government, the Grand Lodge, and to his brethren. What emblem in our degrees is a symbol of obedience?
That's
And
the
I
whip.
So, and there were a lot of people who participated, and it's probably about 150, I think, answered the question. And only one person got the correct answer, which is the beehive.
See, I put the mall.
All right, so that, guys, comes straight out of the passage on the beehive in Lightfoot's commentaries. So it's not in the monitor, it's not in the law book, but it's in the commentaries that were taken out of the monitor in 1982 whenever we did away with Lightfoot's Manual of the Lodge. If you give me just a moment, I'm thumbing through mine right now, and I'll read it to you.
Yeah, and by the way, I love the fact that you actually had the percentage of correct answers on there, and that one just stood out because it said less than 1% got this correct.
Well, I didn't want to put 0.003. So in Lightfoot's commentaries about the beehive, he talks about this goes back to Egyptians and the Egyptians' belief and the masonry, blah blah blah. The beehive, blah blah blah, and the beehive and the bee was a symbol of an obedient people, because of all animals, the bee alone had a monarch for a ruler in the form of a queen. Then it gets into the breakdown of regulated labor and obedience of the rest of the bees in the hive.
The word obedience is used in the lecture or long form lecture, right? Though?
I don't think so. It's emblem of industry.
Writing in my notes to go check that out. It's always good to reread the beehive stuff anyway.
Well, hang on a second. I'll think about it. I've got it in the old cranium here.
No, it seems like it does say something about being obedient to the, not the tribe, the hive. I said the tribe. Something to that effect about it knowing its place, kind of thing. Doing its work industriously. So why you think? I'll just kind of wrap this up if I don't interrupt you. But I was going to ask in the form of a question if this was going to continue, and you've already said there was an end date to the trivia, and I get that. There's no way you can keep up with it day to day, but I would ask and implore that, when you find this stuff out, throw it out there for us. You know what I mean?
And there's going to be, it's going to stop. I mean, there's the trivia question number 50 is going to be where it stops as far as the daily trivia. Now there may be a little nugget thrown out every once in a while. Several guys reached out to me privately and said, you really can't stop it once you start it. Because you've generated the interest has been generated, and I don't want to say it's become the normal, but I mean, it's just part of what we do now. And that goes a different direction, Rick, because the use of teleconferencing software, the use of social media has replaced a lot of what we did even as recently as 2 months ago in the lodge. Our members are still getting together virtually and enjoying some sort of fellowship while conducting the business that got to be conducted. I don't think that we're going to be able just to flip a switch and go right back to just everything being face-to-face in person without utilizing the technology we've become dependent upon in the last 2 months. If anything, I think it's never going to go away. So I think that the stuff like the Facebook group with the committee on work that I operate, with the trivia and the videos, it's not going to be every day, but I think the expectation is there societally to utilize those platforms for everything moving forward. I don't think what we do is going to be any different. The expectation is still going to be there.
Yeah, and I would implore anybody, because we all find out new things that's like, man, I should have known that for a long time. And then they kind of keep it to themselves. there's no reason why anybody can't create a trivia poll on the, Texas Freemasons page, whatever it may be, and share what they find out, to be truth in our law, because there's a lot of misconception out there.
And it's not just in the law, but in just everything in general.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, you are talking to the guy who hosts his own law podcast over there in Rittenmore. So, of course, he has a little bit of a bias in this, I think.
Well, and that's what I loved about the trivia questions is, you come walking into something like, yeah, I understand the law pretty good. And I didn't get more than half of those right, just without looking up anything, just from what I had in my head, there's well over half of them that I didn't get right. And it's like, there's a lot to learn. The more you know, the less you realize you do actually know.
And I also think that there's a really interesting interconnectedness to the law, like how many of these articles depend on other articles as their support and kind of props it up from a trivia standpoint, if that makes sense.
No, that's why I keep saying rabbit holes, because then those laws are connected to Grand Master's decisions that are connected to Grand Lodge proceedings that are connected to, it's such a rabbit hole.
I'll give you a great example of that. If you look in our monitor, it says circumambulation scriptures that are read during the degree may be given by the worshipful master in the East or his designee. What does that mean to you?
That the worshipful master can appoint anybody to read those scriptures.
And if you just read it, the monitor, if you just read that, that's what you get from it. You look in the statutes, there's nothing addressing the circumambulation scriptures in our statutes at all. So you would just think, okay, the master can can designate someone to do it, anybody he wants, and we're good to go. But if you go back to 2008 and read the actual resolution that was proposed and hear the discussion behind it and find out what the intent of the author of that resolution was, you'll find something totally different. That the intent of that was not for the master to simply pick anybody he wants to do it, but that someone who could do it who is a friend or a family member of the candidate who was not otherwise participating in the degree could read those scriptures. That's what was voted on. That's not the language that got put in the monitor.
So what would that be legally binding, the intent of the law, though? I mean, because isn't what's actually codified in the law?
See, the monitor is not law. The monitor is not law. The only thing in the monitor that can be construed as law, Rit, is that section in the entered apprentice degree for candidate preparation, because that's incorporated by reference in Article 127. So nothing else in the monitor can be enforceable by law except for the candidate preparation. So everything else is just, and here's the big difference on that. The statutes are put together by the jurisprudence committee. The monitor is put together by the Masonic Education and Service Committee and the Committee on Work, not the lawyers. So they just put in what they think they heard, where the statutes have that extra level of scrutiny where the lawyers go through it and make sure what's in there is legal and binding. The monitor is not the case. So if you go to try to say you're going to try to police our ritual, how would you police our ritual if it's not written anywhere? And you can't. But the Committee on Work teaches that no member of that who's taking part in the degree who already has a job can take that part upon them to read those scriptures or recite those scriptures. And I never understood why we teach that way, but the monitor says otherwise until I went back and read what was actually proposed in that resolution. What we actually voted on back in 2008 was that specified a family member or close friend who's not otherwise a ritualist to have a part in the degree. That's a prime example there why it's important not to just look at the statutes, but also the decisions and also the proceedings, to read those resolutions as we voted on them and see the discussion back and forth about what the intent of them was. Without that intent, you can't understand what's published in the book.
Yeah. It's intriguing stuff for sure. So, guys, you got anything else before we wrap this up with the quote of the week? I say quote
I
of
just
the
think
week.
we should have a drinking game for Masonic law. Somebody, Gabe, get on that drinking game.
Oh, you do not want me to write the rules for this one.
Anytime Jim Rumsey is right, we take a shot.
And we're all dead.
So I'm not going to comment on that because that can either lead us to being sober all the time or dying of alcohol poisoning very shortly. Because the word right is subjective there, right?
That's correct.
Take a shot.
Oh, Jiminy Crickets. All right, gentlemen, the quote I got for this episode is by Bruce Lee, which this is something that's always kind of been at the back of why I practice ritual. After a long time of practicing, our work will become natural, skillful, swift, and steady. And I thought that was fitting. I mean, to me, it's important to practice that stuff because, I mean, we are imparting something profound. And it goes a lot better when it does seem to flow.
Agreed.
Gabe, you want to throw some contact info out and we'll wrap this bad boy up?
Sure. Folks, if you would like to learn more about our podcast and our lodge, you can visit us at www.fortworth148.org. We are at Fort Worth Lodge 148 on Facebook. Our email is info148@fortworth148.org. And keep your eyes posted for an announcement from the Texas Masonic Con staff. We're going to make an announcement that will come out either by the time this episode is released or shortly after this episode is released. So take a look at your emails, take a look at our Facebook. I won't elaborate right now, but you'll hear from us soon.
You'll hear from us soon, exactly. All right, gentlemen, it's been real. It's been fun.
So
it's real fun. Go ahead, Billy.
actually, and I do have a comment, Jim. We're going to see you in about a month because you are actually part of the installing team for Fort Worth 148 this year.
Oh, yes.
So
That is correct. I'll be doing the installing marshal part.
So looking forward to seeing you in about a month's time.
Back to business.
All right.
All right, gentlemen, this has been fun. This is Rip Moore signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton signing off.
This is Gabe Yagish signing off.
This is Evie Kirkendall signing off.
And this is Jim Rumsey signing off.